Have you ever felt like you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing something that feels completely disconnected from who you were meant to be? Like your life took a detour somewhere, and now you're stuck in the middle of nowhere, watching everyone else live out their purpose while you're just surviving? What if I told you that the most unlikely place you find yourself right now, the job that feels beneath you, the season that feels like exile, the ordinary routine that feels like a prison, what if that's exactly where your calling is being forged? What if the wilderness isn't where you got lost, but where you're being found? Let's discover something together, because I've been wrestling with this question for weeks now. How do you find your purpose when everything around you screams that you're living the wrong life? There's this weight that comes with feeling misplaced, isn't there? You look around at where you are and nothing makes sense. You're too talented for this moment, too capable for this mundane season, too called for this ordinary existence. And yet, here you are, day after day, wondering if God forgot about you or if you somehow missed the turn that would have led you to your destiny. If you're in that place right now, if you feel hidden, overlooked, or stuck in something that feels like it has nothing to do with your future, I need you to stay with me, because what I'm about to share might completely transform how you see your current season. Picture Moses for a moment. Not the Moses with the staff who parts seas and confronts pharaohs. No, imagine the Moses before all of that. He's 40 years old, standing in the scorching desert sun, watching sheep wander aimlessly across barren hills. 40 years old. Do you feel the weight of that? He had education. He had palace training. He had the resources of Egypt at his fingertips once. And now, he's a shepherd, a fugitive, a man who made one catastrophic decision and watched his entire destiny crumble. Every morning he wakes up, and the first thought that hits him is probably the same. This is not what I was meant for. He can feel it in his bones. There's something more, something bigger, but all he sees are sheep and sand and another day of irrelevance. Now shift to Esther, an orphan girl in a foreign land, living under her cousin's roof because she has nowhere else to go. No parents, no status, no voice. She's not being groomed for greatness. She's just trying to survive in a world that sees her as invisible. When she looks in the mirror, she doesn't see a queen. She sees someone who lost everything before she was old enough to understand what loss meant. And Gideon? He's literally hiding. Not leading, not conquering. Hiding in a winepress, threshing wheat in secret because he's terrified the enemy will find him. His hands are shaking as he works, his eyes constantly darting toward the horizon, looking for threats. This is not a warrior. This is a man paralyzed by fear, convinced he's the weakest link in the weakest family, in the weakest tribe. These three people have nothing in common except this. They're all in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing, feeling completely disconnected from any sense of divine purpose. And here's where it gets uncomfortably real, because I think we've been told a lie about how callings work. We've been taught that purpose finds you when you're ready, when you're positioned, when you're in the right place with the right people doing the right things. But what if that's backwards? What if your calling doesn't find you when you're ready? It finds you when you're hidden. Moses isn't discovered in a palace. He's discovered in a desert he's been wandering for 40 years. Esther isn't chosen when she's being groomed for leadership. She's chosen when she's powerless and orphaned. Gideon isn't commissioned when he's confident. He's commissioned when he's cowering. Do you see what's happening here? The calling doesn't wait for the perfect circumstances. It invades the impossible ones. Moses is tending sheep when a bush catches fire and refuses to burn out. He's not looking for God, he's just trying to get through another day. And suddenly the ground he's standing on becomes holy, and a voice breaks through his resignation. I've seen my people's suffering, and I'm sending you. Moses doesn't feel qualified. He stutters. He makes excuses. He literally asks God to send someone else. But the calling doesn't come because he's ready. It comes because he's been prepared in the wilderness for a deliverance only he can lead. Esther is taken into a king's palace not because she pursued it, but because she's caught in circumstances beyond her control. She's not studying diplomacy or training for leadership. She's just trying to navigate a terrifying situation. And then Mordecai's words shatter her illusion of safety. Who knows if you were brought here for such a time as this? The orphan girl suddenly realizes that her entire life, the loss, the displacement, the powerlessness, wasn't random. It was preparation. Gideon is threshing wheat in fear when an angel shows up and calls him a mighty warrior. And Gideon's response? Are you talking to me? I'm the least in my family, and my family is the least in the tribe. But God doesn't see what Gideon sees. God sees what Gideon's hiding, has been preparing him to become. Let's sit with this for a moment, because I think this is where the perspective shift happens. What if the season that feels like exile is actually the incubation? What if the job that feels beneath you is teaching you something you'll desperately need later? What if the obscurity you're experiencing right now isn't God forgetting you? It's God protecting you, developing you, positioning you in a way that only makes sense in hindsight. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before God sent him back to Egypt. 40 years. That's not a gap year. That's not a brief detour. That's 4 decades of what felt like wasted time. But notice what happened. The Prince of Egypt had to become a shepherd before he could shepherd a nation out of slavery. The man who tried to deliver his people through violence had to learn patience, humility, and total dependence on God in the wilderness. The education he received in Pharaoh's palace wasn't wrong, it just wasn't complete. He needed the desert to strip away everything he thought made him qualified so God could rebuild him into something far more dangerous to darkness. Esther's orphan years taught her survival, resilience, and empathy for the vulnerable. The girl with no voice learned to navigate systems of power she never asked to be part of. And when the moment came, when her people faced genocide and she had to risk everything, she didn't just have access to the king. She had the courage forged in years of loss. She knew what it meant to lose everything so she could risk everything. Her obscurity wasn't a mistake. It was preparation for a moment where one voice could save a nation. Gideon's fear taught him what Israel needed to remember. Victory doesn't come from strength. It comes from surrendering to the God who fights for you. The man hiding in the winepress became the man who reduced his army from 32,000 to 300, because God wanted to make it clear this wasn't human strategy. This was divine power showing up in human weakness. So here's the moment where everything clicks into place. Your calling isn't hiding from you, you're being hidden for it. The wilderness season you're in isn't wasted time, it's sacred preparation. The obscurity isn't punishment, it's protection. Because here's what I'm learning. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And that qualification doesn't happen in spotlight moments. It happens in the hidden years. It happens when you're faithful in the season no one sees, when you're doing the work that feels disconnected from your destiny, when you're showing up even though every fiber of your being is screaming that you're in the wrong place. Moses had to learn to lead sheep before he could lead people. Esther had to learn to survive powerlessness before she could steward power. Gideon had to face his fear before he could become fearless. And you? Maybe you're in the winepress right now. Maybe you're in the desert. Maybe you're in the palace you never asked for, feeling completely out of place. But what if that's exactly where your calling is being refined? What if the unexpected place you find yourself isn't the detour? It's the destination where your preparation happens? Your calling isn't coming when you're ready. It's coming when you've been made ready, and that process doesn't look like what you think it should. It doesn't feel triumphant. It feels like exile, like hiddenness, like you're in the wrong story. But pay attention to this. Every biblical figure who changed the world was forged in a place they didn't choose. They were found in their wilderness. They were commissioned in their weakness. They discovered their assignment in the most unexpected place because God specializes in writing redemption stories in the margins of impossibility. So let me leave you with this. Whatever wilderness you're in right now, whatever unexpected, uncomfortable, seemingly irrelevant place you find yourself, don't despise it, because your calling might not be waiting on the other side of this season. Your calling might be actively being shaped inside this season. The sheep you're tending today might be preparing you to shepherd people tomorrow. The fear you're facing today might be forging the courage you'll need for a battle you can't even see yet. The powerlessness you feel today might be teaching you how to steward influence with humility and mercy when it comes. God has a history of finding his greatest warriors in the most unlikely places. He found a deliverer in a desert. He found a queen in an orphanage. He found a warrior in a winepress. And he's finding you right where you are. Not when you're positioned, not when you're ready, not when it makes sense. Right now, in the mess, in the mundane, in the middle of nowhere. Because sometimes the most powerful callings are discovered not when we're searching for them, but when we're simply faithful in the place we didn't choose. Your wilderness isn't the end of your story, it's where your story is being written. And the calling you're looking for, it might already be looking for you, right where you are.